Hello students, I hope you all are doing well. In this video, we will start with the first chapter in Science 1, that is Laws of Motion. Let us first start with what is motion. Now motion is nothing but the movement of any object. Wherever you see movement in particular object, that particular object is called to be in motion. In this chapter, we will be learning various terms related to motion and also Newton's three laws of motion. Here are few examples and we need to find whether there is motion or not. Examples are the flight of a bird, a stationary train, leaves flying through air, a stone lying on a hill. Now, if the body changes its position with respect to its surrounding, then we say that it is in motion. Now, in these examples, we can find that the flight of a bird and the leaf flying through air shows motion, whereas a stationary train and a stone lying on hill does not show any type of motion. So, motions are present in first and third example here. Let us now learn about displacement and distance. And we will also learn the difference between displacement and distance. Look at this picture now. If you will look at this picture, you will find two figures, figure A and figure B. Let's look at figure A first. If we have to measure the distance between point A and B in different ways, then the distance measured may be of different lengths depending on the path we choose to measure. We can choose any path here. This path also we can choose or this path also we can choose. We will find different lengths here. And if we measure the distance along the dotted line, here from A to B you can see this dotted line, and if we measure the distance along the dotted line, it shows that this is the shortest way to reaching point A and B. Now look at the picture B. This is Sheetal and Prashant's house and this is Sangeeta's house. The distance between Sheetal and Prashant's house and Sangeeta's house is 500 meter, and this is the first path, that is the path A. Here is the school which is 1200 meters from Sangeeta house, and if you will go directly from Prashant and Sheetal's house to the school, it is 1300 meter. Now Sheetal first went to her friend Sangeeta's house on the way to the school, and Prashant went directly to the school from his house. So, if they both are walking with the same speed, who will reach first to the school and why? Let's understand this. Sheetal is going to the school, but first she is going to her friend's house. So first she is covering 500 meter and then she is going to the school and then she is covering 1200 meters. So that means she is covering total of 1700 meters. Whereas Prashant is going directly to the school. So he is covering only 1300 meter. So can you guess now who will reach first? Yes, obviously. So Prashant will reach first. He will take less time as the path followed by him was the shortest. So displacement and distance. Distance is the length of the actual path traveled by an object in motion while it is going from one point to another, whereas displacement is the minimum distance between the starting and the finishing point. In the previous example, as we saw, the distance was the length which was traveled, that is the actual length which was traveled. But the displacement will be the minimum distance which was covered, as Prashant covered the minimum distance, or even from A to B there was minimum distance covered. So that is called as displacement. That is the minimum distance which is taken to covered from point A to point B, or from starting to the finishing point. To understand distance and displacement in detail, let us look at another example. Now here, Swarley walks round the edge of a circular field having a radius of 100 meter. So the radius of the circular field is 100 meter. If she starts from the point A and takes one round, how much distance has she walked and what is her displacement? So children, she is at point A and she is taking one round of the circular ground and again reaching at point A. We need to calculate the distance and the displacement that is done by her. So as it is a circular ground, we know the formula is 2 pi r. Pi, it is 3.14, and 100 is the radius which is already given to us. If we will multiply all the values, we will get the answer as 628 meters. So the distance covered by Swarley was 628 meters. But now here you will see the displacement is 0 meters. Now how come the displacement is 0 meters? So children, displacement is the initial or the minimum distance which is covered. So if we will calculate the distance from the initial point to the final point, okay, as displacement is the distance between the initial and the final point. She is starting from point A and then again she is reaching at point A. So she is reaching at the initial point only. That is why the displacement is 0. There was no displacement which was taking place. And this is the reason why the displacement is 0. So we have distance as 628 meters and displacement as 0 meters, because there was no displacement only taking place. From the initial point, she is again reaching to the initial point. There was no final point. Let's look at another example of distance and displacement. This will clear all your doubts related to distance and displacement. Now here, in the picture you can see a car is there. So a car moves from point P to point Q and then it returns to point P. We need to calculate the distance traveled by it and also the displacement. So what is happening here? This car is at point P. It is reaching at point Q. Then again from point Q, it is coming back to point P. What is the simplest way to calculate the distance? That is, we will calculate the distance from PQ to QP and we will get our distance. So distance covered will be PQ plus QP. So PQ is 360 meters. QP is also 360 meters. We will add both the numbers and we will get 720 meters as our distance covered. Now, what will be the displacement? Displacement will be 0. Now, how displacement is 0 here? The car is at point P. From point P, it is going to point Q. P is the initial point, Q is the final point. So the car is at P, that is the initial point. It is reaching to the final point. From the final point, it is again coming to the initial point. So there was no displacement only. It again reached to its initial point. So that is why the displacement becomes 0. Now for instance, for an example, the car would have stopped at point Q. P से वो Q पे अगर रुक जाता, then what will be the distance and what will be the displacement, children? The distance will be 360 meters and our displacement will also be 360 meters because the car reached to its final point. But now here in this case, the car is again coming back to the initial point. So the displacement becomes 0 meter. I hope you all must have understood the difference between distance and displacement now. Let us now understand speed and velocity. Speed and velocity are connected to distance and displacement. If you are able to understand and you can calculate distance and displacement, you can easily understand and calculate speed and velocity as they both are connected to each other. Let us first look at speed. Well, Speed is the total distance traveled by an object in a unit time. That is called as speed. So if we have to calculate the value for speed, then whatever was the total distance that was traveled by a particular object, we will divide that distance with the time that was required to cover that particular distance. And we will get the speed of that particular object. On the other hand, velocity is the displacement that occurs in unit time. So here, instead of distance, we have displacement. So whatever was the displacement of that particular object, that displacement we will divide with the time that was required to cover that displacement. And we will get our velocity. So this thing you need to remember, that when you are calculating speed, we take distance. That is the distance that was covered. And when we are calculating velocity, we use the displacement. Also, the unit for speed and velocity are same. SI system the unit is meter per second, and in CGS system it is centimeters per second. So we can use same units for speed as well as velocity. So children, in this video we learned about motion, distance and displacement, and speed and velocity. I hope you all have understood the basic concepts now. Thank you for listening. Until then, take care of yourselves and stay safe. Bye bye.